I've always had consistent, annoying, painless, reoccurring injuries when it comes to running. So if you've had that problem, follow along as I'm going to talk about my story and how I overcame them. Okay, so a little backstory. I started running cross country in high school, grade 10, 11, 12. Wasn't very talented. I was like middle of the pack at my best, and I always had shin splints when I was on the team. I remember after the first year, my cross country coach told me to go to a specialized shoe store to get some running specific shoes. So I went there and they told me to take off my shoes, and they watched me walk, and they told me that I had flat feet. With a diagnosis of flat feet, they told me that the best shoe for me was a stability shoe, which is pretty common practice. And from there, I always thought I needed a stability shoe. But the shin splints never went away, and actually they got worse. So then when it comes to college, just to stay in shape, I would run every once in a while. I mean, not very often, maybe on the weekends or a couple times during the week. And I would get shin splints again. And at this point, it was getting worse and worse every time. They would get more painful, and they would reoccur even faster. And then I would just have to quit and then start all over again. And then when I joined the Navy, same thing. I would be running on the treadmills when we were out at sea, and I would get shin splints, and I would chalk it up to the fact that it was just the treadmill and I wasn't meant for running on treadmills. So basically my whole running career, I just kind of assumed that I would get injuries because that's just how my body was made. It was because I had flat feet, and there was nothing really I could do with it. Some people were more gifted than me and were meant to be runners, and there were people like me that were just got hurt, and that's just how it was. I figured I wasn't blessed with the genes of being a natural, talented runner. Fast forward to present time, I've actually been injury-free from overuse injuries for the last year and a half. And from that year and a half, I've been able to build my fitness on top of it without being injured. I've been able to do an ultra marathon and a half Ironman triathlon. And because I haven't been hurt consistently and having to quit, I've been able to build my fitness consistently over and over and over. And I'm actually the fittest I've ever been right now. I'm gonna try to make this success story step by step so you can follow along, and hopefully you can get injury-free just like me. Step one is rest. When I used to get injured all the time, I used to never rest long enough. I had shin splints, I had stress fractures, I had pulled muscles in my feet, all these different things, and I would come back within a week, and I would keep trying every second day, over and over and over, and I would only stop when it hurt. This is not a good approach when it comes to trying to get back from injury. So if you've been hurt for a while, take a decent amount of time off. I'm talking a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. During that time, I'm gonna give you some steps that I took to actually strengthen yourself, so when you do come back in that time, there'll be a way higher chance that you can actually come back with success. You need to be working on your stabilizer muscles. So this is something I never did as well. Back when I was hurt all the time, I would get hurt, I'd wait a couple days, and then I would go after it again. I would never actually focus on the problem of why I was getting hurt. A huge problem for me was that I didn't have any stabilizer muscles worked up. These are things that avid runners are able to slowly build up because they haven't been hurt. But when you're consistently hurt all the time, you never get a chance to build these up. I'll put a link down below to a quick little YouTube video workout circuit that I did. It's just for like your feet and your calves and stuff like that. It doesn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes. I did it about twice a week while I was hurt, so take the 2 or 3 weeks and do this thing. What you'll notice is when you actually come back, you'll have some strength in your feet and your calves to give you a chance to actually start putting in the miles to start getting stronger. Number 3 was when I finally came back after doing the strengthening exercises. I needed to stop slamming my feet. I always slammed my feet. I was a huge heel striker. Heel striking isn't so bad. It's a matter of where you're landing. So if you're landing way out in front of yourself, which usually is heel striking, that is bad, and that is what I did. See, I made the mistake of thinking that that was just the way I ran. But just like any skill, running is a skill and you need to work on it. It doesn't mean you need to be a toe runner or a heel runner or anything like that. It just means you need to work on it. There are drills you can do to get better, and that will actually correct your form. It'll allow you to not have to put quite as much pounding on your body when you do your strides. I read a book called Born to Run. The book has a lot of great things about running advice. There's one takeaway you can take from it. There's a guy that gives the author some advice, and what he says is to run easy, light, and quick. and in that order. So you should always try to focus on running easy, and after you master easy, you should work on landing light. So this is something that I worked on all the time, always thinking about running light, and you don't want to hear your feet. It really is as simple as that. You want to pick up your knees and lightly drop them back down. You don't want to be hearing that slam. So if you're listening to music while you run like I used to, sometimes you can't quite tell just how badly you're slamming your feet. So make sure, just for at least a couple times, take out the music or turn the volume down and really listen to yourself and make sure you're not slamming your feet. So number 4, when I first came back as well, is I decided that I wasn't gonna run on pavement or concrete, or at least try to minimize it as much as possible. So I tried to find grassroots and gravel. So sometimes I would drive right to parks to get my runs in, and other times I would just run on the little grass strip right beside the sidewalk as much as I could. So that was just a tip that I used because I was a little paranoid about getting hurt, and it seemed to work for me. So you might want to give that a try. Number 5 is a huge one, and that is to run slower than you think. If you're like me as well, I used to run way too fast all the time. I didn't understand the difference between a slow pace, moderate pace, hard pace. It was just basically I would run at the pace that I thought I was supposed to run at. But the reality is, for the majority, about 80% of your runs want to be run at a slow pace. That is very, very slow. It's your conversational pace. I'll put a chart up here maybe about roughly the speed you should be going, but you should be able to talk the whole time. So if you have very little fitness, and you might have very little fitness because you've been hurt, it's okay to walk. It's something you really have to get over in your head. Yeah, so run slower than you think. Don't be a hero. It's okay to walk. As long as you're out there running a little bit, staying in a conversational pace, and just building up the miles without getting hurt, that is huge. The next thing that I always follow, or at least I followed for a very long time until I built up my fitness, was to make sure I had a rest day after every run. So never do back-to-back days when you're still building your fitness. You're still building those muscles. You don't need to be breaking them down by running 2 days in a row. Number 7, I've kind of already touched on it a little bit, but it's to land underneath yourself. A lot of people always talk about how heel striking is really bad, but really what they mean is landing out front of yourself is really bad. So you want to land right underneath yourself. A good way to correct that is to try to increase your cadence. So the optimal cadence is 180 steps per minute. That's actually pretty high. Even if you're in the 170 to 180 range, that's really good. I'll link down below what I use for cadence. I use an app. So I just listen to this app while I run, and it just ticks away. So then I just try to step to the beat. And what it does is, as you increase your steps, you end up landing lighter and underneath yourself more. It really works for me. You're probably gonna have to slowly build up your cadence. So say if you're really slow, like maybe you're 150 or around there, only try to build up to 155 and then do 160, then 165, then 170. Don't try to do one big jump. It's not gonna be that easy for you, or it's not gonna be that good for you. So build it up slow, but try to get to the 170 or the 180. And another tip is, when you're running, is to think about bringing your elbows straight backwards. All right, so when you bring your elbows straight backwards, that makes your other leg land underneath you. And I got that from another YouTube video. I can't remember who it was, but I'll link that down below as well. This one I always follow, I never skip it, and that is to cool down. So whenever I'm done my run, I always walk 5 minutes after, just to cool down. A lot of people know how important a cool down is. I knew how important a cool down was too. It's like you get lazy, you just don't feel like doing it. You don't really think of the importance of it when you're tired after a run. So I would skip it, and I would always find I would get hurt. So now I always walk 5 minutes after a run, so give that a try too. The last step, I'll give this a bonus step or an optional step because I don't want to harp too much on people's diets, but I actually went high carb, low fat, plant-based. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it or it had a lot to do with me getting healthy, but I find I recover better from it. If you are wondering about nutrition or anything like that, I would definitely recommend high carb, low fat, plant-based. I'll link down below some documentaries about talking about how it lowers your inflammation in your body and stuff like that. If you're not into that, that's okay. Just do the other steps. I'm sure that'll be enough. And another thing to think about is to make sure you stay on top of things. So whenever you get healthy, don't just think it's over and you can just go back to your old ways. Try to keep these habits as a routine. Keep up with your strengthening exercises. Make sure you always get your cool down. Always keep the day off in between. Always be trying to improve your cadence a little bit more and landing light. And don't ever think you need to start pushing it harder and harder and harder on those easy days. So I would say stick with running easy and all that for about 8 weeks until you get that good base, and then you can start doing other stuff. But until you get 8 weeks straight consistent running without any injuries, don't mess around with any of that high pace stuff. You're only risking more than what you really need out of running. So those are my tips on how I got healthy and how I've been able to build my fitness for the last year and a half. Hopefully you guys can take something out of this. Hopefully you guys can follow these and get healthy and get your running game back on par. If you like these videos, subscribe, because I'm always making videos about running, cycling, triathlon, anything endurance related that has anything to do with goals. I'm all about goals. So if you want to do your first 10K, 5K, marathon, triathlon, whatever I say go for, that is the best way to get fit. All right guys, so thanks for watching. Get after those dreams.